Black Lives Matter 5280-ish used a flash mob and songs to disrupt a city council meeting on Monday, attempting to keep the spotlight on Michael Marshall's death. The protest came as the council reviewed and eventually approved a new social impact bond program to help house 250 chronically homeless individuals here in Denver. Patty, this was among many headlines around City Hall. We could have had a topic 2 minutes long between you had the protest, you had this homeless program passing, you had a restructure of the Sheriff's Department. Take your pick. It was a big week. Well,
just as we have so many topics to talk about, Black Lives Matter 5280 has maybe a few too many causes on their plate right now. You know, they really came into prominence this summer and fall when they were pushing to rename Stapleton, because Benjamin Stapleton was a KKK supporter back in the 20s. So you can understand that it didn't go very far. Now they have more campaigns, and especially with Marshall's death. So it's interesting that they were there protesting when the homeless vote was going on. And this is just one of many prongs of Denver's homeless mission. This is not the biggest one. We really have to see where Denver's road home has gone over the last 10 years. We still have all the homeless on the streets. We still have the move with the urban camping ban, which Black Lives Matter is also trying to overturn. But what they should probably be focusing on right now is what's going on at the Sheriff's Department. That's in the jails are where we've seen those high-profile deaths. Marvin Booker, Marshall. It looks like an interesting plan that Patrick Furman is pushing. It certainly makes some sense, given what the studies we've seen have come through, that there should be one person really in charge of both these jails, then people in the jails also overseeing them, but that there's going to be a more coordinated look at both the training, how prisoners are handled, and just information about the prisoners. When you see how little information they were giving people when they were deciding where to house prisoners, you can see where a lot of these problems came from.
David, legally, does Mitch Morrissey, I guess my question would be, does he have any more options, or is there potential reforms there? Because I think a lot of people start their beef with the DA's office is that he has a perfect record so far in not issuing any charges to a variety of situations that have ended up with multi-million-dollar settlements. It's not just it's just gone away. It's, at least in a civil case, which I know is a much different threshold, has come back in a different way. Do you expect any changes or comments at this point from the DA's office?
No, Mitch Morrissey has a well-established track record. In his defense, I'd say there's a difference between what you can get in a civil settlement, which is based on the parties predicting which side is going to win 51-49, versus the burden of proof that you have to have as a prosecutor to prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. And part of that proof is you can win a civil case on just negligence or poor training. That's very different from proving an intentional criminal homicide. He hasn't been a leader. I don't know every single case, but I think the vast majority of ones, he made the correct decision that there was not a prosecutable case there against the police or sheriff's deputies. All lives matter, including the lives of homeless people. So it was particularly selfish and narcissistic of Black Lives Matter to disrupt this particular city council meeting, where we're actually seeing something very innovative and constructive, for which I think the mayor deserves tremendous credit. This social bonds program essentially says we will pay people who try to help homeless people get off the streets, get their lives back together, and become responsibly self-supporting again, based on your success rate. The more you succeed, the more money you make. The less you succeed, the less money you make. So what a efficient way to spend taxpayer dollars on something really important. And the lives of homeless people matter just as much as the lives of anyone else.
Penn, there are a lot of issues here that we talked about, but one thing that keeps coming into my focus is, at some point, does Mayor Michael Hancock need to address specifically the Black Lives 5280? I don't think Black Lives Matter 5280, pardon me, that they're not going away anytime soon, and we're about to get into a summer where we're likely going to have more, at least, opportunities for situations like this. What do you think?
Yeah, and you started out correctly. This is a huge area, so I guess I'd offer the following. Black Lives Matter 5280 has a lot on their plate because you got Marvin Booker and Michael Marshall and a whole bunch of other incidents of excessive force and use of deadly force and loss of life. And we've talked before about all of the settlements and payouts the city's made over the last 3 or 4 years to a number of families because of all of people killed by police or sheriff conduct and or misconduct. It's interesting at the parade this year, people don't talk about the fact that Black Lives Matter 5280 also sort of protested or participated in that and spoke out, and the mayor caught some criticism when he was trying to address the crowd. This is an issue that is front of mind with so many people, you can't ignore it. And you can try to policy your way around it and through it, but at some point people are going to compel you to address it. So I'd like to see the city be more proactive and step out and say, okay, we hear you, we've got to deal with some of this and talk about some of this. I think the reorganization of the Sheriff's Department may help. I just hope at some point they get some community input to that process, because there is the belief that the city has become so insular, they're not listening to people. In terms of the DA's office, I like Mitch, but David's right. His record is perfect. He's never prosecuted anybody. But the distinction in this case is, you've got the city's coroner who has ruled this was a homicide. And so not every DA has to only prosecute cases they know they can win. Sometimes you bring a case because it's the right thing to do. You know that it's been deemed a homicide by the coroner. Yeah, I read Mitch's letter, and the coroner said can't conclusively state one thing or another, but sometimes a criminal prosecution is a search for the truth and justice. And at some point, there needs to be sort of a cleansing, and some of this needs to be brought in front of a jury of peers to let them hear the evidence, listen to some of this, and resolve what happened. When a 112-pound man who's got mental illness is killed in a jail, and the only people around him are 5 deputies and 2 nurses, something's wrong.
Right. I agree. It feels sometimes that there's too much of a concern for a perfect winning record with these cases, rather than just should it go to trial.
Sure.
Mike, regarding the homeless program here, this is not the first time the city of Denver has attempted to do something positive for the homeless. What do you think is different about this plan, good or bad?
Well, I agree with David. I think it's a good step. I think the mayor deserves a lot of credit for pursuing this. It's innovative. It's something new that the city will pursue. I want to go back to something Penfield mentioned about the DA's case. One of the reasons we're having these debates, and there's so much pent-up demand to debate this right now, is police violence really never came up in our 2015 mayoral or city elections. I mean, you can say what you will about the council races, but the mayoral contest wasn't really even a contest. There was really no chance for that to come up. Hopefully with the DA's race coming up later this year, there will be a chance to fully debate this, and we're going to have an active Democratic primary for that seat, and hopefully that'll provide an avenue to really discuss the issue of police violence.